This is disaster preparedness class number 4. I'm Ann Forrest. My email's up on the screen at seattleprepares@gmail.com, and I am very glad you're here. Today, we are going to talk about communicating after an earthquake. Let's assume we had an earthquake. The shaking has stopped. What do you do? The first thing you're going to do is you're going to check on people and pets around you. Make sure everybody's okay. The next thing you're going to do is control utilities, which we spent the last 2 classes talking about, but we will review. Gas, you want to shut it off if you smell the gas or if you hear a gas leak. Otherwise, leave your gas alone. Electricity, shut it off only if you see damaged wires or you smell insulation burning, which is kind of a plasticky smell. And water, always, always, always shut it off. Super easy to turn back on, but you really want to keep that water inside your building in the pipes clean and drinkable. So that's how you handle utilities, and that's the second thing you do after the shaking stops. Check on people and pets, control your utilities, and then the third thing you're going to want to do is reach out to find out how your loved ones are and get more information. Information is going to be a little difficult to get if it's a large earthquake. So we'll talk about some of the ways you can do that. So making contact with family and friends, that's what a lot of us are going to want to do right after an earthquake. If everybody in our building is okay, let's find out how family and friends fared. So do not call 911. It apparently is very common for folks to call 911 after something like an earthquake to ask, was that an earthquake? Please don't do that. Ties up the lines and somebody might actually need to get through. A landline might work. Landline meaning your phone is hooked to the wall via a cord. Less than 10%, it's probably closer to 5% of landline phones in Seattle are truly landlines. And that means there's a copper wire going from your phone all the way to the phone company. It is actually very rare. Almost all phones, even if they look like landlines, have some break in that copper wire, and it goes wireless at some point, way outside your house and your control. But so very few landlines, what look like landlines are actually landlines. So you might want to check that. You can call your service provider, see if they'll give you a good answer. And also, if you ever have a power outage, see if the phone works. If it doesn't work, it's not truly a landline. But even if you have a working landline, don't make calls unless absolutely necessary. Let the folks get through that absolutely need to get through. So texting is probably your best bet. And the reason for that is if you text, you're sending out a little cyber package of information and it kind of floats around until it reaches the person it's meant for. Not quite that simple, but it's sort of that simple. If you try and make a phone call, even with your cell phone, as soon as you hang up that phone, your ability to contact that person is gone. So sending that text out into cyberspace is really a good idea. Plus, it's a very, very short bite of information. So there's a chance it will get through if some of the lines are working. So if you are, even if you're just trying to text, you want to make sure that you include the date and the time in every text that you send, so that if it gets delivered late, it won't confuse the person that's getting it. And make your message count. You want to tell them how you are, where you are, and what your plan is. This is a little bit small. I'm sorry for the small printing, but the text says, oh my, OMG, what was that? Are you okay? Where are you? What do we do now? Lots of question marks. So you haven't told that person that gets that text anything other than your thumbs work. You're alive and your thumbs work. You haven't told them where you are, how you're doing, what your plan is, what are you going to do next, all that kind of stuff. So sort of a useless text. If that's going to go through, if you're going to get a text through, make it count. So this is a much better one. It says, I'm home and fine. Pup is fine, meaning the dog. checking on neighbors, but staying put, 4:25 p.m. Tuesday. So you have told them how you are, where you are, and what your plan is. I'm staying home. It's Tuesday, 4:25 in the afternoon. So if you're going to text, make it count. Out of town contact. There's this weird phenomenon after big events that phone lines are so tied, they're either damaged or they're so tied up that it's really difficult to get a text through the city, from city resident to city resident. It is weirdly easier to get a text out of the city and back into the city. So we have something called an out of town contact. Their job is to relay messages between household members. So if there's two of you, you and your partner are here in Seattle, but you're separated after the earthquake. One of you is at the grocery store and the other one of you is at work, something like that. You're trying to text one another and you can't get through. It just says the line is busy or whatever. You don't know what is happening, but you're not getting through. You would both text your out of town contact person, and you're going to tell them the same information. This is how I am. This is where I am. This is my plan. And this is the date and the time that I sent this text. And then that person can relay that message. If they're watching the text string and it doesn't look like the folks on the ground can talk, then they can take that message and forward it back down to the other family members. So again, that text may make it out of the city to Ohio or something like that. And then your family or friend in Ohio, your out of town contact, can then turn around and forward that message back down to the other folks on the ground. You want this out of town contact to be in Spokane, Washington, or further east in the country. You don't want further north. You don't want Vancouver, British Columbia. You don't want Portland, Oregon. You don't want, San Francisco. You don't want anybody on the West Coast. You want Spokane, Washington, or further east. And that's because they may be involved in the same power outage or earthquake or whatever. So choose your out of town contact person carefully and explain to them what you want them to do. You want to give them a to-do list. Well, first of all, they're going to help you communicate with folks that are on the ground. Second of all, they can call other people. Like my out of town contact is my mother-in-law in Vegas. She has instructions. I emailed them to her and asked her to print them out. I want her to call my mom, who happens to be in Illinois, and tell her that she's heard from Anne and the rest of the family and we're all okay. I want her to physically call my mom. I cannot text my mom. She's not a social, she's not a computer type. So I want her to call. I also want her to post on Facebook that she has heard from Anne and the family and everybody's okay. So I have given her a list of a couple people to call and then asked her to post on social media what she knows and just keep posting, keep people updated. So that's what your out of town contact person can do for you. So find that person. Now, I want to talk about a project that the hubs have worked on. We're maybe 90% finished. It's called I Am Safe. And it is letting people outside of the disaster zone know that we are okay. So these are people, let me go through it. Ham radio operators can send messages to your out of town contact over radio waves. So let's say you didn't designate an out of town contact ahead of time, but we've had a big disaster. You would like to let your mother or your father or your sister or your brother-in-law or whomever, you want to let somebody out of the disaster zone know that you're okay, and you want them to spread the word to anybody else that might be interested in your whereabouts. So you didn't write down there, you didn't make this arrangement with them, maybe you can't remember their phone number, whatever. We have a way of sending messages to folks that are out of the area. And the information that would be really helpful for the ham radio operators to have, and this is easiest to hardest, is email. It is so simple, weirdly simple for a ham radio operator with the right program downloaded on a laptop. So it's not super simple, but really easy to send an email directly to them. And there's kind of a limit in how much you can send, but basically it's you could send a decent message. You could tell them how you're doing, what your plans are, all that kind of stuff. So email is really, really easy. Next, if you don't have an email for that out of town contact person, the ham radio operators can text them. It's easiest if you know their carrier. It's a little bit harder if you don't know their carrier. And last of all, going into this really, really old, fabulously built system of ham radio operators. It's been around since probably World War II. They can actually send a postcard to your loved one and say, I heard from Anne in Seattle. Her and the family are fine. She's staying at a relative's house. This is the phone number. This is the address. She'll be back in touch when she can. That kind of stuff. Let everyone else know. That's the kind of stuff that you could put on a postcard or any of these means and send that off to your out of town contact. I know there's a couple things in the chat. I'll get there in just a second. So your out of town contact should contact others. Give them that as a responsibility. Post on social media and anything else you want them to do. Who knows what that might be, but anything else you can think of that you want your out of town contact to do, give them a list, educate them on how to do it. And I'm sure they would be thrilled to do whatever they can to help you out, because they can't send you money, they can't send you water, they can't drive over here and help. If it's a big earthquake, all they can do is kind of sit in their house and send good thoughts your way. Safe and Well was a website that the Red Cross managed. It is no longer working, which is why we're getting into the I am safe business. The hubs are, and I'll explain the hubs in class number 6. But so it used to be that Red Cross would post a website where you could, if you had access to the internet, you could log in and mark yourself as safe. That no longer exists. They don't have that contract anymore. Okay, I'm going to pause for just a second and take a look at the chat, make sure I'm not missing anything. Yeah, copper lines going out of style. Good question, Nancy. No, it does not matter if your phone out of state is linked to your family phone service. You wouldn't have an easier chance of reaching them versus anybody else. Yes, include the email address on the cards with important phone numbers. Thank you, Jody. I'm going to get to that in just a second. So think about this. You're in an earthquake, your phone breaks or it dies. Every bit of fabulous information that is stored in that thing is no longer available to you. So don't let yourself get in that position. You want to write down your important phone numbers. And that's a lot of important phone numbers. That's your partner in case you forget their phone number. It's family members. It's your out of town contact, and include their email address along with a good phone number for them. Maybe it's a school, maybe it's your landlord, definitely neighbors. Definitely neighbors. You might want to call them or talk to them, call or text and say, hey, I just heard from Sally down the street that, her gas is leaking or whatever. Can you run over and shut mine off or something like, or go turn off my water, or can you check on my dog? There's a million things that neighbors can do. So write down their phone numbers, have those conversations so that if you're away from home and something significant happens, you've got some resources right nearby. Maybe you want to write down your employer. Maybe you want to write down your pet sitter's name, a friend on the walk home in case you need to stop and grab a bottle of water or something. And then the emergency radio stations. Cairo 710 AM is our emergency radio station for this area. They may be broadcasting on their 97.3 FM, but definitely 710 AM. So write down all that good information I have mine on 3x5 cards stuck in plastic bags, and they are tucked everywhere. They're in desk drawers, they're in backpacks, they're in glove boxes, they're in my husband's commuter bag, they're in my son's backpack. Put them lots of places. I probably sat and made 9 of them at one time. So this is something you can do while you're sitting in front of the TV. Make these foam cards and then put them in plastic and tuck them everywhere you need to go. Everywhere that makes sense for your family. Yep, there's the plastic bag. So the last thing, and this is definitely on your to-do list, is get more information from Alert Seattle and Alert King County. And this is another place where they will be sending out good information. In addition to the emergency radio station, Alert Seattle, Alert King County will be sending out information as soon as they can. If there's no text, if there's no cell phone signal in the city, no internet access, they're not going to be able to send anything out. But as soon as it's working, this is how they will get information out to us about how to keep ourselves safe. And they'll send out big stuff like this bridge is down, this hospital is still accepting trauma patients, that kind of stuff, big stuff. I talked about the emergency radio stations already. If you have an emergency radio at home, like one of the crank ones with batteries inside and all that, write on your radio, KIRO 710 AM, because I don't listen to regular radio very often. And I don't listen to KIRO, but anyway, I would never remember where it was. So write it on your emergency radio just so you know exactly where to go. Don't forget about television stations. They may be up and running, and then the emergency communication hubs, which we will talk about in class number 6. That is a fabulous place to go and get information. And we will do our second topic of the night, which is early earthquake warning. I love this system. I think it's fascinating. So luckily for us, there are 2 types of waves that are transmitted, that are sent out from an earthquake. One of them is called a P wave, and it travels really, really fast, and it doesn't cause that much shaking. The second one is the S wave, which is slower, comes out after the P wave, and it's the one that does most of the shaking. So P waves are first and fast. Animals are more sensitive to P waves, but they only feel those waves, if they're going to feel them at all, they're only going to feel them seconds before the shaking. It's not days or weeks. So they may pick up on it, they may not, but they're not predictors necessarily of earthquakes. Anyway, the S waves are slower and cause more of the shaking. So the geologists, seismologists, have developed a system to detect quakes. It takes 4 sensors to pick up on a quake and figure out where it's coming from. Where is it coming from? How deep in the earth is it? And how much shaking is probably going to be caused by it? And who should they notify? All this information comes from these sensors. It takes a little bit of time to get all of that information, about 3 seconds from the time that the P wave is sent out. So, quickly. And then once it's generated the signal, then there's a little bit more lag time to figure out what to do with that. So I'm going to play this video.
Don't let yourself be convinced to do something that you know is bad, and then even finally just share it.
With even a few seconds of warning, Shake Alert can save lives and reduce injuries by alerting people to take a protective action such as drop, cover, and hold on. Shake Alert further protects people and infrastructure by triggering automatic actions such as slowing down trains to prevent derailments, opening firehouse doors so they don't jam shut, and closing valves to protect water systems and to stabilize equipment during life-critical situations. How does Shake Alert work? When an earthquake occurs, seismic waves carry energy in all directions away from the epicenter. P waves, similar to sound waves, move quickly through the ground, followed by the slower and generally more damaging S waves and surface waves. Sensors detect the seismic waves and send that information to a Shake Alert processing center, which requires that at least 4 sensors detect the earthquake. If the earthquake fits the right profile, the USGS issues a Shake Alert message. Distribution partners then produce and deliver an alert to people and trigger automated systems. Alert delivery can be before, during, or after shaking from S waves and surface waves. Alerts can be delivered to people through apps designed for cell phones and other wireless devices, over public address systems, TVs and radios, and by FEMA's Wireless Emergency Alert System, WEA, which is also the source of Amber Alerts. For every earthquake, there is a region near the epicenter where alerts will not arrive before shaking begins. That's because close to the epicenter, the P and S waves are too close together, and the shake alert system needs time, often just seconds, to estimate the earthquake's magnitude and shaking levels before issuing a shake alert message. That means that people close to the earthquake epicenter might not get an alert until after the shaking has already started. Those farther away from the epicenter could receive more warning time before shaking arrives.
If we ever start having earthquakes, one of our problems here in Seattle is we don't have earthquakes. We're not practiced on what to do. But if the early earthquake warning goes off and it happens, you don't get shaking, but you got an alert, or you felt shaking and then the alert happened or whatever, people are going to be really upset and they're going to say this stupid app doesn't work. Try and teach them that it's working just fine. But there are times where you will get a warning, but no shaking. They misjudged where the shaking was going to go. You got a warning, but little shaking. Like, really, why'd you bother me with this thing? Or you got shaking and the warning came later. And that's because you're too close to the epicenter for that message to get to you before those S waves do. So there's going to be lots of variation. It doesn't mean the system's broke. It just means you were in the wrong place at the wrong time. So how the alerts get to us, there are a couple different ways. Shake Alert uses the Wireless Emergency Alert System. If your cell phone is in the area that they believe is going to be impacted, you will get a message. Similar to Amber Alerts, I don't know if you could hear the alert sound, but it is exactly what you'd hear for an Amber Alert. It's the same exact noise. All WEA alerts, regardless of type, behave the same, meaning it's that same sound, and then you get that message right on the front of your screen. You don't have to go looking for it. Yeah, I just talked about that. Enable WEA on your phone, the Wireless Emergency Alert System. I believe if you, for some reason, you don't want to get Amber Alerts, I believe you can turn off Amber Alerts, but still get early earthquake warnings. If somebody wants to test that out, please let me know if it is possible to shut off one and not the other. So I've given you directions or given you guidance on how to make sure that your phone, if you have a smartphone, make sure that you can get those alerts if you want them. Android, it's already kind of built in. MyShake is an app that is built by a private company. There's going to be more apps like this. The one that's out right now is MyShake, which actually they've been using in California for quite a while. Really good app. I have it on my phone. It's the only app capable of delivering earthquake early warnings in Washington State at this time. Again, there'll be more private app companies, apps out there, but MyShake is out there now. And you want both because you never know. Yeah, it's just a good idea. Redundancy is a good idea. So in the homework for this week, there's information on how to make sure that your cell phone can get those emergency earthquake alerts. So it's probably closer to 75% of the sensors are in place now across all of Washington State. 2025, they should have all of them up so that every earthquake that's out there, we can detect pretty accurately. If you hear that alert, something that sounds like an Amber Alert, you look at your phone and it says early earthquake warning, drop, cover, and hold on. And if you have the presence of mind to do it, yell to everybody else around you to do the same thing. This is an office setting. There's no sound to it. What they should do is get underneath their desks. It's not what they do. Feel the earthquake, and they're just running to the door. And it is the worst thing. It is our visceral instinct to run outside and get away from all that stuff falling on us. But they really, all four of them should have just gotten under their desk. I don't know if you saw those two guys running for the door at the same time, but man, it looked like one or both of them got their fingers crushed. So this guy is still just kind of, wandering around, which in this case wasn't a bad idea, but it could be that the earthquake had a slow start and then really punched hard. So should have gotten under the desk. Just fight that urge. Class next week is going to be, what does make a plan mean? We talk about it a lot. We're going to actually walk through a plan so you have a better idea of what this might look like for your household. And then we'll also make a get home bag. So that's coming up next week, Wednesday, April 19th, 7 p.m. I'm going to stop sharing and see if anybody has any questions. I don't see anything in the chat. All right, bye-bye.